Protein charges onto menus. A once promising treat brand shutters its doors for good. And we've got 5 restaurant resolutions for 2026. Welcome to Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm editor-in-chief Sam Oches and joined by my colleague, executive editor, Alicia Kelso. Alicia, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
2026. I've gotten to that age where I don't care that it's a new year. Nothing really changes. It's like and this was the first year in a long, long time I did not stay up for the ball to drop. I was the exhausted parent of 3 children who fell into bed and said, "Okay, great, it's another year. Who cares?" But Alicia, are you like that? Do you care about ringing in the new year?
I do. I'm kind of sentimental, but I was also in Florida for the Michigan Bowl game, which they lost. But I was awake because Ohio State also lost. And so I was like, sustained by that energy.
There's something wrong with you.
I know it.
Yeah, we had a bad football couple of weeks. That is for sure. You and I, that is the last. Although you hired a new coach, which I told you before we hit record, I thought that was a good hire. So you've got things to be excited about this time of year. I haven't experienced this in a long time, but this is the time of year I get to experience as of about an hour ago. This is Browns hire a new coach season.
Yeah.
So football, it's about to be a nice, unwelcome distraction for the next couple of weeks. Okay, Alicia, we're going to talk about restaurant resolutions in a little bit, but I want to do our lightning round at the beginning of this episode, not at the end, because I want to know, did you make any New Year's resolutions?
I didn't. I'm not into that.
All right. You like
you're
bringing
not
in the New Year,
yes.
but you do not like making resolutions.
Correct. I like to think that I am consistently disciplined every day and completely imperfect and okay with that imperfection.
That should be, that phrase you just said, that should be a tattoo. Just put that on somebody's arm and just constantly remember that. I'm with you. I don't like resolutions mostly because I just am really good at failing at them. And I just get to a point where I'm like, why do I even make them if I know I'm going to fail at it? However, I do like at the beginning of the year to write out a bunch of stuff. Just kind of like, it's more like, who do I want to be as a person? And I will say there's an overall theme for this year. So if you want to call it my New Year's resolution, fine. But my overall theme for this year is live life more analog. I have decided I need to do more records. I have a record player behind me, and I've been into records for a long time. But listen to more records instead of Spotify. Read more real books instead of my Kindle, which will still get some use. But read actual magazines. Imagine this: I'm the editor-in-chief of a magazine, and I don't read a lot of magazines, but I've recently got a subscription again to Rolling Stone. I'm really enjoying it because all of this takes me away from my phone. Now, my resolution last year, which I'd never measured, so I don't know if I succeeded or not at it, but my resolution last year was be more present for my kids, which also in itself was related to my phone. All of it comes back to, dude, get off your phone. And the last thing I'll say about this is I got one of those brick things. Have you heard about these things?
No.
Our colleague, Christy Ravnaberg, told me about this last year, and I finally got around to getting one. It's like this magnet. It's priced way too high. It's embarrassing how much money I paid for what is essentially a magnet. But you scan it with your phone and it locks down the apps you tell it to lock down until you go back and scan that magnet. So the point is it's just saving you from yourself. If you're a disciplined person, you can do this, which is I'm going to avoid those apps. But as a undisciplined person, apparently, like myself, who needs to be saved for myself, you use this to say, well, now I'm in the basement and I put, that magnet up on my fridge, and I there's no way of unlocking these apps unless I walk upstairs and scan that magnet, which it puts that sort of hurdle between you and those apps. It's the friction behind it. So I have put email and social media and sports news behind this, and New York Times. I put them all behind this because those are the things that I was constantly turning to when I'm sitting with my kids. And Alicia, I got to tell you, I am currently on a 5-day streak. I haven't unlocked it.
That's awesome.
And I've personally made the plan. It's not a resolution because I'll fail at it for sure, but I've personally made the plan. I'm going to try to keep them locked, except for when I travel for work, because then I do need my work email and things like that. But anyway, may this be encouragement to others. Get off your phone. There are a lot of tools for you to do that. Be present with the people. Live life more analog. I don't need to get preachy about it. I have found it's better for me. I think it could be better for you. So anyway, that's all I have about that.
When you said you were going to live life more analog, I briefly thought you were going to say that your resolution was live, laugh, love.
No, no, no. It was eat, pray,
Like, well,
love.
that's
Eat, pray, love.
interesting.
Because we are in the restaurant industry.
I'll support it, whatever.
I do two of those really well. I'll let you figure out which two. Just kidding. No, no, no. We love everybody who loves all this stuff. Okay, let's jump into restaurant news. There's not a lot that we can cover. Alicia, one of the things you and I love about this time of year is that the restaurant industry does go a little dormant as restaurant operators focus on serving the masses who are coming in for the holidays. And thankfully, there's not a ton of news, but we've got some things we want to unpack before we get into our resolutions for 2026 for the industry. Let's start with protein, the word of the moment, the trend of 2026. I don't know. For some reason, protein suddenly big. We've each lived long enough to see many diet trends come and go. Protein, nothing new here. It's just suddenly everybody wants to eat more protein. I don't know. Maybe there's some connection to the Maha movement. I don't know. I just know that restaurants are recognizing that customers want more protein. So now you see brands like Chipotle putting a bunch of meat in a cup and calling it their protein offering. And Shake Shack, CAVA, Pliables, Bella Green. There's so many other restaurants we've heard from in the last couple of weeks alone that are intentionally putting more protein forward items on the menu. Alicia, what's going on with protein?
Well, a couple things. To your point, protein, the trend toward protein has really ramped up this year. In fact, 61% of consumers are actively seeking to add more protein in their diet. That is per Cargill, which is one of the world, they're seeing a 61% increase. 70% of Americans are prioritizing protein, and more than one third have actually increased their intake just in the past year. Now, we've seen this trend manifest in the industry in various ways, but to your point, the past couple of weeks have been really madness. And you kind of figured this was going to be a thing when Starbucks came out with protein cold foam. And then Sweet Green came out with a bowl, and then it just started really picking up. And then, of course, in the past couple of weeks, we saw Chipotle come out with a protein-focused menu. Subway, Dunkin, like to your point, all these companies. Lazy Dog has a protein crunch bowl, and so on and so forth. The inbox was very stuffed with protein-forward meals and promotions. This is a product of increased consumer demand and New Year's. We always see new menu launches around New Year's that are healthier or have a healthier halo or perceived healthy halo. That's what consumers want. We talked about resolutions opening this dialogue. A lot of Americans still have resolutions, and a lot of that is to eat healthier. And so every year, especially Chipotle they always focus on their healthy bowls, coming out of the new year. It's a good example here, but to see companies like Subway and Dunkin get into the protein craze, we kind of expect this from CAVA and Chipotle, but that just kind of proves how ubiquitous this trend. You don't think of Dunkin as getting involved in the New Year's health resolution menu trend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely true. You know what I like about this trend, though, Alicia? Because I tend to roll my eyes at some of these things. And you made a comment on our Team Slack channel. This sort of like, everybody kind of lines up and does the thing. You can see this is no coincidence. All the restaurants are paying attention to what's going on and are eager to jump in on the trend. So I can be pretty cynical about a lot of things, including this. But I will say one thing I do like about this is an easy lift for the industry, that they are already serving protein. And if you look at what Chipotle did, now it got a lot of ridicule on social media, and you just kind of have to chuckle about it. But, all Chipotle had to do was put some chicken in a cup, right? And call it a new menu item. And it's amazing to think that that could work, but I think it will work for them, because you're going to have enough people out there who are eager to just eat more protein, and that checks a box for them. So if you're listening to this out there and you're thinking, how do I jump in on the protein trend? Well, you've already got protein on your menu, very likely. It might just be how you package it up. How do you, or you put it in a new packaging, or you put protein on top of a menu item that didn't previously have it. Or, if you're in the beverage space, look at things like foams, whatever. I just don't think not going to require too heavy of an investment outside of your marketing and, putting it on your menu board. Otherwise, if you've got the protein, just try to shine the spotlight a little brighter on it. Now, I will say the con of this all is it's happening at a time of record beef prices.
Yeah, it's an easy lift except for beef.
Yeah, exactly. So, you got to be a little creative in which protein perhaps you're thinking about using this for. But I don't know. I think a net positive for the industry that it's not a super complicated trend to jump on the bandwagon for.
No, and consumers have shown that they're willing to not only order it, but pay for it. So we laugh about Chipotle having a cup of meat, but that menu that they came out with was pretty robust. I mean, they got a high protein burrito, which it's just double the chicken. To your point, it's there, just double it, and consumers are going to pay the premium for that because they're going to get their protein intake for the day or for the meal. And so I think that's what's really kind of fun about this trend is we can meet that need as an industry.
Well, we'll see. To your point, Alicia, this is the time of year we see a lot of the health-forward, diet-oriented trends come to life, and so that's no different with this. We'll see if that lasts very long into 2026. I think broadly for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of more attention on health, and I think that will continue in 2026. That spotlight may move away from protein onto something else, but I think at least for the first quarter of 2026, expect a lot of protein to take over menus across the restaurant industry. Let's briefly talk about one more headline. Alicia, a once promising emerging treat brand, just announced that it is closed up for good. Sprinkles Cupcakes, which came to life, I guess, about 20 years ago now.
It's been around 2005. Yep.
2005, a good long while. Candace Nelson, who keynoted our Create event back in 2024, she sold it to private equity back in 2012, but she founded it and, capitalized on what was a really hot trend for a couple of years. The cupcake trend, these artisanal cupcakes, fancy cupcakes, whatever you want to call it. She launched Sprinkles, I believe, in Beverly Hills, and before social media, before influencers, was able to capitalize on celebrities really embracing these fancy cupcakes and getting the word out there in the early days of social media, and just took off like wildfire. Sprinkles was a fast-growing chain for a while. Again, sold to private equity in 2012. Came up with the Sprinkles ATM, a kiosk that sold Sprinkles, a vending machine essentially for cupcakes. Kind of a great idea, and I think was ahead of its time when you think about a lot of the other momentum toward vending machines and things like that, kiosks that have come up in the last couple of years post-COVID. They were on top of that pre-COVID. That was happening, back late 2010s. So a little surprising to see that the brand is closing up shop. It is going kaput. Alicia, what do we think is going on here?
Yeah, so surprising that Candace Nelson herself was surprised.
Yeah, she announced it on her social media. That's
right.
Right.
And I think that is kind of the crux of this story. Is she came out on her Instagram story and said, I guess this is closing, which is a bummer, to me. So they didn't have a terrible 2024. I mean, if you look at Technomic data, they didn't grow. They stayed flat. They didn't decline. Many, many brands declined in 2024 versus 2023. And their sales, at Sprinkles were up 3%, which again was right around industry average and a heck of a lot better than a heck of a lot of concepts. And so I throw my arms up at this. It's just really shocking. But something that you said leading into this specific segment, you said that we are sort of beelining toward healthier, health forward. We always do that at New Year's. But overall, beyond the first 2 months out of the gate, when folks are trying to adhere to their New Year's resolutions, this health forward stuff has become a bigger narrative in the industry all year round. And so where does that leave companies like Sprinkles? Now, that is a very generalized statement. But I think we talked about this before the call over Christmas break. There was a rumor going around on TikTok that Crumble shut down. And I went into panic mode to make sure that I wasn't missing some news. Crumble is fine. Crumble is not shutting down.
That would be a remarkable. I mean, they're
remarkable.
Yeah.
But they have experienced some closures. So has Dirty Dough. Dirty Dough just closed last week, for example. So they're retrenching this week. What is the market for this? It is extremely limited, for these sort of premium price treats that customers are willing to pay for very sporadically. And a lot of these, I don't think Sprinkles is the case here, but a lot of them did have cannibalized each other. There's a Dirty Dough like 2 blocks from a Crumble in my market. There's only so much visitation that can go around for that. The other thing that intrigues me is their vending machine model. I think is an interesting model. You and I are in airports all the time. We're seeing more companies that are not treat specific focus on vending machines. Subway's got a vending machine in the Cincinnati airport. California Pizza Kitchen is going all in on airport vending machines. So it just really interesting. But this just follows that frozen yogurt, cupcake. Will cookies be next? It's that copycat industry that we tend to over-index on. When the pendulum swings a certain way and everybody throws their hat into this ring, the ring gets really crowded, and then we just have too much saturation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially if you look at some of these niche sort of single item type brands, those ones you just mentioned, frozen yogurt, cupcakes and cookies, or poke, for example. I mean, I'll be a story here in a little bit. I have a good friend, ahead of a poke concept that we'll have the story soon, is shifting the focus away from poke onto other menu items, because you just can't be a restaurant serving just that one thing anymore, especially in this economy. Because I think if you look at what are restaurant consumers doing right now, what is their behavior? Why are they going to restaurants? They're going to restaurants to have an experience. They are prioritizing more upscale experiences. And there's all kinds of data that shows that this is why casual dining brands are starting to make a comeback. It's because people are saving their restaurant dollars for that once a month casual dining visit instead of spreading out across these multiple QSR visits. And so that's especially going to hurt a niche concept, and especially a treat concept that is probably more of a treat yourself, luxury, do that once in a while. People are saving their dollars for a more, I think, comprehensive, wholesome kind of family experience where they go out, they sit down. Yes, they're paying more, but they've saved their dollars from their cupcake and cookie budget so that they can spend it on this meal that they're going to have with their family and have that good experience. So I think that that's probably one of the reasons why you're going to see really focused niche concepts start to either pivot and sort of broaden the aperture of what they are serving, or perhaps go away altogether. Maybe Sprinkles, maybe they were just reading the tea leaves there, and they're just like, there's not a market for a cupcake only brand out there. I think there's also the health component to your point, Alicia, that you mentioned. I think Crumble, I'll use as an example. We've done Crumble a few times, and the response from our family is always the same. Holy cow, they're so big, I cannot even eat one. I'm more in the camp of, I like Crumble cookies. I know that it's pretty divisive. People, you either love it or you hate it. I like them. I just can't eat one. And so I tend to be like, well, why am I going to go get that cookie that I can't even finish? And by the way, I can bake cookies with my kids for very, very cheap. So anyway, all of these things are swirling around, I think, that probably contributed to the Sprinkles.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a really interesting conversation I think you and I will have throughout the year, because there are exceptions to this rule. If you think about the one trick concept, for example, that's not impacting beverages, and that health thing, that's not impacting, the Seven Brews of the world. And then Nothing But Cakes is doing phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and
true.
So
and they have nothing but cakes.
And they have nothing but cakes. They have little bunt cakes, but
Well, to piggyback on the beverage part, you've seen how they've expanded their beverage menus at least,
Yeah.
right? So perhaps
There's
it's how you
thousands of
frame
combos.
have you
Yes.
framed the like what is the focus? Because beverage as a platform is a little bit wider, but point well taken, which is like I think consumers are also this, this horde that kind of moves in one direction and then moves in another direction together, right? And right now they're really hot for beverages, but not so much maybe that sweet treat. And it might come back around. We see this constantly cycling through. There will be some sort of single focus treat concept that comes up in 2032 and we'll go like, whoa, this is the next big thing. But anyway, that's life in the restaurant industry. Alicia, let's get to it. We have some resolutions for the restaurant industry. Even though you and I had some of the loosest resolutions for ourselves this year, we spend more time on the industry. That's what we care about, you, our audience. We want to give you some resolutions as a restaurant leader. Alicia, we're going to start with one of yours. Alicia, let's start with your idea around four-wall growth. Tell me what your
Yeah.
resolution is for the industry.
My resolution is that operators they prioritize four-wall growth over unit growth. I think that we have kind of been on a little bit of a runaway train to the contrary in the past several years. And
Crumble being a good example of that.
Yes, and the pandemic was a very a wake up call to sort of take a beat here, and we have seen a lot of concepts grow and then retrench 2 years later. We've also, you and I have unique visibility here in our inboxes where we get constant pitches of, hey, we signed this huge deal. And we don't see those deals come to fruition. We signed 200, by 2025. Well, it's now 2026 and there's 3, We see this happen far too often. And you and I, Sam, have been covering this industry for a really long time to know that on paper, what you sign sometimes does not, unfortunately, come to fruition because there's a lack of focus on four-wall profitability. Now that's hard to do now because, as we've talked about here, the P&L is different. The average unit volumes that could get you through really successfully in 2019. That goalpost has moved significantly. I had multiple conversations with folks at RFDC about this. There are some folks that don't believe you can run a QSR for less than 2 million anymore in AUVs. And that's just not historically been the case. So four-wall profitability is far more of a priority than unit growth in this environment until we get used to how to deal with the new P&L that we have. On that note, Rick Cardenas, the CEO of Darden, they reported right before Christmas break. He had a quote that I have on a Post-it note that I will reference way too often to the point where I will annoy you. Quote, growing too fast is an issue in this industry. You're not going to see Darden doing that. You won't see Darden's concepts exceed 10% annually. You'll be lucky to see them get 5. And they have huge AUVs. So that's my first resolution.
That's a good one. I've said this before, probably on this podcast. It maybe seem kind of contradictory, but it's really not a competition. The size of your brand, of your system, the number, your customers don't care. Your customers might walk in, you might have 1,000 restaurants and your customer might walk into your local franchise or your local shop and never heard of it. And all they care about is that one. The fact of the matter is in order to win today, you need consumers in your doors who are going to enjoy the experience and want to come back. And the only way to do that is if you focus on that great experience, on that, the business in that one shop, and then do that 1,000 times over if you have 1,000 of them. So I think that is a very good goal. And I think Rick Cardenas is a very good leader to listen to. I'm biased. I had that great interview with him last year. I recommend everybody go check that out because that dude, he knows what he's doing, believe it or not. 40 plus years in the industry, and he happens to know what he's doing. All right. My first resolution for the restaurant industry, Alicia, and I know you have something to say about this too, is improve your hospitality experience through your culture. Alicia, I told you before we hit record, I was shook, Alicia, as the kids say, by my time last month with Chris Tomaso, the CEO of First Watch, which everybody's going to get to check out here in another week or two when we put up as our next episode of Signature. Chris, you've probably heard of, just a really good, decent human being, and often is written about for this fact, for how good of a leader he is and how great a culture First Watch has. And that all comes back to him. The easiest example of illustrating the culture that he creates is how Chris handwrites notes to every employee celebrating a milestone. And that might seem like nothing, but they have 600 restaurants, and that's all employees, thousands and thousands of employees, and people who are celebrating 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. He writes them a handwritten note congratulating them. And I asked him about it, and he told me during the interview, like, this shouldn't be a big deal. This should be what leaders do. But the fact of the matter is leaders do not do it. And so where it comes back around to what I'm saying around hospitality experience is that, as we've already talked about earlier on this podcast, experience is kind of everything for restaurants today. Creating a great experience is what customers want out of their restaurant visits. They're going to prioritize your restaurant if you provide a great experience. No, I'm not talking about axe throwing or pickleball or whatever. I'm talking about, did they feel good when they were there, from the service to the ambiance, the aesthetic, the quality. And hospitality is driving so much of that experience. If you have a great, friendly, server, you're probably going to have a great experience regardless of what they got for their food, even if the food might have been slightly disappointing. If the server was great at their job, it's going to be memorable. It's going to be something that customers want to come back and have again. And you get that out of your team, out of your service staff, through great culture. So I have traditionally not loved that word culture, just because I don't think it really means a lot. It's one of those things, you know it when you see it. I saw it in Chris Tomaso and at First Watch. I see it in a lot of other leaders in this industry. You and I can both name a lot of folks that we think do culture very, very well. And those are the companies traditionally that are doing very, very well at the cash register too, because culture trickles down from the top to your store employees. And if they feel like they're a part of something bigger, if they feel like they're a part of a family, a mission, they're going to do their best and then pass it on to the customers, and that will be successful. So my resolution: improve the hospitality experience through culture. Alicia, I know you have something to say about that too.
It goes with one of my resolutions, and that is prioritize your investments toward labor. And that it supports the culture that you speak of. Customers are very sick of transactional, that we had to kind of navigate throughout the pandemic and the 2 or 3 years following the pandemic. We want to be seen and heard. That's why Dutch Bros is doing so well. And that is as transactional a model as you can think of on paper. It is a drive-through beverage concept, but because they invest heavily in labor and really push that culture piece, look, give them a cup of coffee and ask them how they're doing. Ask them what they're doing today. Those little things, it's more than just handing them a cup of coffee out the window. And then, all of this investment in labor, I think the Panera turnaround story that they're trying to, execute in the next 2 or 3 years is a great example here. When I spoke to Paul Carbone, the CEO, he basically said, we need to do this. We haven't been near our apex in a really long time. And one of the priorities is investing in labor, because there were so many shops that you would walk into and not see a single worker. And they lost traffic for years and years. And I know that was a turnoff for me, who's a Panera stan a little bit, walking in and not knowing what to do and not having anybody help me with the kiosk, and showing my age a little bit here. But I like being greeted when I walk in to pay $20 for a half a sandwich, and, having that reduces turnover, makes people's jobs easier, also makes it more fulfilling, reduces turnover. There is a clear return on investment here.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. This isn't just, wishy-washy voodoo thinking. This is a very specific business strategy. Culture means a lot of different things for a lot of different brands, but come up with whatever it means for you, put it into practice, that strategy, it will pay off. Okay, Alicia, your next resolution has to do with barbell menus. Tell me more about this.
Gosh, what is it? It's January 5th, Sam.
It is.
And my inbox is filled with value offerings.
Yep. Hmm.
And I think what this underscores is the value environment that started in earnest in middle of 2024 is not going away anytime soon, especially now that we're adding the fact that healthcare costs are going up. So that's another hit that consumers are taking in terms of what they are able to afford. So value is going to still continue to be top of mind through 2025 or 20, what year are we in? 2026.
Yeah.
That is, coupled with the fact that you just talked about those historically high beef prices. How do you protect your margins? It seems like a near impossibility in this kind of environment. Resolution: sharpen your barbell menu. And I think what you'll find is many times, if not often, customers will come in for that value offer and see something a little bit more enticing at the premium end of your menu and go for it. You'd be surprised when people see something that they like that is that premium, that they will be willing to spend $2 more. And I think that the barbell menu needs to be center stage this year because we've got to figure out how to protect our margins.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Alicia, I do want to take a pause because it's been 30 minutes and I have not complimented your Raising Cane Snuggie. So I wanted to just quickly give the moment it deserves for those who are watching this on YouTube. They
so
are probably wondering, like, is he going to mention the Raising Cane Snuggie?
They sent this to me before Christmas. It's so warm. It's like these companies know I work in my cold basement, and I'm just desperate.
Not your only restaurant Snuggie, and I do have a restaurant Snuggie. I don't know why restaurants make all these Snuggies, but we're here for it.
It's amazing. It's because you're also in your cold basement.
I'm also in a cold basement. Us in our Midwest basements dealing with these winters. It is something else. Okay, I just wanted to take that moment.
Thank you.
And yes, I wanted to give you that compliment. Let's move on to my next resolution, and that is getting back to your core concept, or I also called this one ditch the novelty. Here's what I mean by that. And it kind of circles back to what we were talking about with Sprinkles. And it kind of circles back also to what you're talking about with Panera. But what we've seen a lot in the last couple of years is a lot of novelty around value menus. So also talking about that barbell menu, you see a lot of novelty with value menus. You see a lot of novelty with marketing on social media, restaurants kind of throwing stuff at walls and just seeing what sticks. And you're starting to see, I think we saw in 2025, you really saw some pushback against that. Wendy's and Popeyes, two very obvious examples of this, where they did a lot of crazy promotions and it did not show up in their sales. It did not work. And they themselves, I know at least Wendy's came out and said, hey, we're going to cut a lot of this sort of white noise of all of these various promotions we've got going on, and we're going to get back to what makes Wendy's great. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of other companies should learn. Panera is another very good example of this, and they have also kind of acknowledged, hey, we got a little bit off of the sort of beaten path here of what makes Panera great, and we need to get back to that. Restaurants, if you have been around for any significant amount of time, there's something that made you great in the first place. For some reason, when you had one restaurant, you were able to open a second and a third and a fourth because there was something special about your restaurant. And as you grow, as you scale, there are pressures to change and try new things and innovate. And by the way, all of those things are good. You do have to adapt for the future because, adapt or die, I think is very real. And there are a lot of companies that will tell you that they didn't adapt and they died. So they couldn't tell you because they're gone. But, if you cannot stick to your core sort of foundation of what you are as a brand, who you are, sort of the soul of who you are as a brand, customers will notice and they will stop showing up. And, Wendy's is a good example. Again, I'll use sort of all Columbus examples here. Bob Evans is one I have called out in the past. And by the way, thank you to my friends at Bob Evans. We are in communication and we're gonna break bread, as I mentioned on the podcast, because we're gonna have a real conversation because I am, to use your term, Alicia, a Bob Evans stan. I grew up on that. There is a soul to that brand.
100%.
There's another Columbus one. It's like these are brands I grew up with, and I know what they are to their core. And if I walk in the doors and I don't see it anymore, I start to look elsewhere to take my business. So in this year, which I think can start to be a recovery year for restaurants, I'm not out here to say everything's going to get better from 2025, but I do think things hopefully have bottomed out and will start a slow recovery in 2026. One of the, I think, main things you can do, one of the ways you can ensure that this recovery is going to work for your brand is to go back to the fundamentals, go back to the core brand, whatever made you special in the first place as a restaurant brand. Go back to that and double down on that. You can innovate around it, but don't get distracted by all the novelties and things like that.
I love that. And we saw that again, to your point, especially in the last round of earnings calls. Popeyes did call themselves out for being a little bit too distracted by things that were not their core. They're going back to focusing on their sandwich and their bone-in chicken. Wendy's also called themselves out. They did not have a very strong year last year, and they were just throwing spaghetti at a wall. Papa John's has called themselves out. They got carried away with bowls and papadillas and all that stuff. They're a pizza brand, right? So it does feed into my final resolution, which is to be very intentional about your messaging. We have seen marketing budgets increase significantly, really, in the past 2 years. A lot of these brands are following Chili's success. Understandably, there's a playbook that's written, by Chili's to do this, and we have seen, a lot of brands follow suit on that and adding marketing, but it has to be done more intentionally, more targeted. Otherwise, there's just a lot of noise out there, and it's really tricky to cut through the noise when we've got a record number of limited time offers that were launched last year, and these companies are launching record LTOs to find that elusive traffic that hasn't been positive in some time now, as well as the intense value environment where you have to be top of mind because we have the best value. So I think that is going to be the biggest challenge, especially for marketers. I don't envy their job, but the priority has got to be to figure out either how to fragment audiences, how to target audiences, but definitely how to cut through noise and be more intentional with messaging because it's really loud out there. Mm-hmm. And, customers might throw their hands up and just be like, we'll just cook at home because I can't make a decision.
Yeah, that's a good one. The noise part. I mean, we started this talking about resolutions, and mine is essentially to cut all of the noise out because it's too much. It's overwhelming. And whether you're like us and you're a parent to a small child, and that makes it even noisier and crazier, or even if not, it's just there's so much going on, and you've just got to be so much more strategic in how you're getting the attention of the customer, and not in a way that is like shiny thing, look over here, but is let's fit into your lifestyle. Let's show you how we can be a part of your routine, and bring you in the doors and show what we've got. And hopefully you'll come back and get it again. Alicia, 5 resolutions for the industry. I think those are good. I think we should revisit this in a year, see how we did. I'm sure we could come up with 500 more, as there's just so much always going on in this industry that we love so dearly. So that's all for this week. Alicia, thanks again. Happy New Year to all of our audience, and we'll talk again next week.